This is the complete history of Illinois crime, from H. Holmes to Drew Peterson, the state that has produced more defining American criminals in more eras than almost anywhere else on earth. From the blood-stained streets of Prohibition-era Chicago to the hidden horrors of the nation's first known serial killer, Illinois has a darker past than almost any other state. Today, we're mapping out the complete timeline. 8 names, 1 century, 1 geography that keeps producing them. Pull back far enough, and you can see the pattern. The crimes change, the weapons change, the technology changes. But Illinois, and especially Chicago, sits at the center of almost every chapter of American criminal history. Not as a backdrop, as a participant. The skyline, the rail yards, the suburbs, the prisons, they keep producing the same story in different decades. So let's walk through it. From 1893 to the present. 8 cases, 8 inflection points, 1 state that never quite shakes the shadow. Start in 1893. Chicago is hosting the world's Columbian Exposition. 27 million people pour into the city to see electric lights, moving sidewalks, the future itself. And in the Englewood neighborhood, about a mile from the fairgrounds, a man named Herman Webster Mudgett, operating under the alias H. Holmes, runs a 3-story building on the corner of 63rd and Wallace. Popular memory calls it the H. Holmes Murder Castle. It calls Holmes America's first serial killer. It says he killed up to 200 people inside a maze of trap doors, gas chambers, and acid vats built to dispose of bodies during the World's Fair. That version of the story is, almost entirely, a myth, invented and inflated by Hearst's New York World newspaper and a 1940 crime writer named Herbert Asbury. Eric Larson's best-selling book, The Devil in the White City, helped cement this narrative in popular culture, though historians have since challenged many of its claims. The real story is worse in a different way. Historians who have actually combed the records, most thoroughly Adam Selzer, author of the definitive book on the case, can only confirm around 9 actual victims. The building's 1st and 2nd floors weren't a tourist hotel. They were shops and long-term apartments. And his victims weren't strangers lured off the street. They were people he knew, business partners, girlfriends, children, people he insured, then killed for the policy money. Holmes was a con man first, a murderer second. He was a swindler the Chicago police were already investigating for unpaid debts. They never imagined the man behind the bad checks was also burying bodies. He was finally caught not in Chicago, but in Philadelphia, after killing his accomplice Benjamin Pitzel for an insurance payout. He was hanged in 1896. But the legend he left behind set the template for everything that came next. Chicago, the public decided, was a place where evil could hide in plain sight. Skip forward 30 years. Prohibition arrives in 1920, and Chicago becomes, almost overnight, the criminal capital of the United States. The Chicago outfit began under Big Jim Colosimo before Johnny Torrio took over, turning illegal alcohol into the most profitable industry in the country. And at the top of it, by the late 20s, sits a 26-year-old from Brooklyn named Alphonse Capone. Al Capone is not the inventor of the outfit. He inherits it from Johnny Torrio after Torrio is shot and decides retirement is healthier than Chicago. But Capone turns it into something new. At his peak, his organization is grossing an estimated $100 million a year in 1920s dollars. He owns judges, he owns aldermen, he owns the chief of police. The mayor of Chicago, Big Bill Thompson, runs on a pro-Capone platform and wins. The myth is that he was untouchable because he was feared. The reality is that he was untouchable because he was useful. He kept the city wet during a dry decade, and Chicago liked him for it. Then comes February 14th, 1929, a North Side garage at 2122 North Clark Street. 7 men associated with Bugs Moran's rival North Side gang are lined up against a brick wall and machine-gunned to death by attackers dressed as Chicago police officers. It becomes known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Capone is in Florida. He has, conveniently, an unshakable alibi. No one is ever convicted. But the massacre is the moment the public turns. The federal government, which had been content to let Chicago handle its own problem, decides Capone has to come down. Elliot Ness and his team of the Untouchables built the tax evasion case that they could not prove in murder or bootlegging. So in 1931, they convict him of tax evasion. He goes to Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, a king. He leaves it 10 years later, a syphilis-ridden shell of a man. He dies in Florida in 1947. The outfit, though, does not die with him. It survives, it evolves, and by most accounts, it is still operating in Chicago today. Rewind. 5 years. May 1924. Two University of Chicago students, Nathan Leopold, age 19, and Richard Loeb, age 18, kidnap a 14-year-old boy named Bobby Franks off a Kenwood sidewalk. They bludgeon him in the backseat of a rented car. They pour acid on his face to prevent identification. They stuff his body into a culvert near Wolf Lake on the Indiana border. They are both from wealthy families, both with genius-level IQs, both convinced, after a steady diet of Nietzsche, that they are Übermenschen, superior beings to whom ordinary morality does not apply. The murder is not for money. It is not for revenge. It is, they tell each other, to prove they can commit the perfect crime. They make one mistake. Leopold drops his prescription eyeglasses near the body. The frame is a model so rare that only 3 pairs have been sold in the entire Chicago area. One belongs to him. Their parents hire Clarence Darrow, the most famous trial lawyer in America. Darrow does not contest the murder. He pleads them guilty and turns the sentencing hearing into a 12-hour argument against the death penalty itself. He wins. Both boys get life plus 99 years. Loeb is killed by a fellow inmate in 1936. Leopold is paroled in 1958 and dies in Puerto Rico in 1971. The case introduces America to a new kind of killer, not driven by poverty, not driven by passion, driven by an idea. Fast forward to July 14th, 1966, a townhouse on East 100th Street on Chicago's South Side. A drifter named Richard Speck breaks in through a back window. Inside are 9 student nurses from South Chicago Community Hospital. Over the course of several hours, he ties them up, separates them one at a time, and murders 8 of them. A 9th, Corazon Amurao, survives by rolling under a bed and hiding there in silence as he kills her friends one by one. When the killing is finally over and Speck has lost count, he leaves. Amurao waits until dawn, climbs out a window, and screams from a ledge. Speck is identified within days. He had a Born to Raise Hell tattoo on his arm that Amurao remembered. He attempts suicide in a flophouse, survives, and is convicted. He dies in Stateville Correctional Center in 1991. The Speck murders mark a turning point in American crime coverage. He becomes one of the first killers whose face is on the cover of every magazine in America. The phrase mass murder enters the public vocabulary in its modern form, and the country starts asking a question it has never quite stopped asking. What does it mean that any of this could happen, anywhere, to anyone? 10 years after Speck, in a quiet suburb called Norwood Park Township just outside Chicago, a contractor named John Wayne Gacy is running a successful construction business and performing at children's hospitals dressed as Pogo the Clown. He is a Democratic precinct captain. He has been photographed with the First Lady. Between 1972 and 1978, he murders at least 33 young men and boys. He buries 26 of them in the crawl space beneath his own house on West Somerdale Avenue. He buries 3 more elsewhere on his property. The remaining victims he dumps in the Des Plaines River. The crawl space is finally discovered in December 1978, after the family of a missing 15-year-old named Robert Peast insists police look at Gacy. They do. They smell what they're looking for the moment they open the door. Gacy is convicted and sentenced to death. He is executed by lethal injection in 1994. If Holmes set the template, Gacy seemed to confirm it. The monster lives next door. He waves at you. He fixes your roof. He shows up at your kid's hospital ward in a costume. Illinois had given the country its first serial killer in 1893. 85 years later, it gave them one of the worst. September 29, 1982. Elk Grove Village. A 12-year-old named Mary Kellerman wakes up with a sore throat. Her parents give her 1 extra-strength Tylenol. she is dead within hours. That same day, in Arlington Heights, a postal worker named Adam Janus dies the same way. His brother Stanley and sister-in-law Teresa come to the house to grieve. They take Tylenol from the same bottle. They die that night too. Within 48 hours, 3 more victims are dead. Mary Reiner, who had just given birth a week earlier, Mary McFarland of Lombard, and Paula Prince, found in her Chicago apartment. 7 dead, all Chicago area, all connected by one product. Investigators move fast. They figure out within days what happened. Someone has pulled bottles of Tylenol off store shelves around the Chicago area, opened the capsules, replaced the acetaminophen powder with potassium cyanide, and put the bottles back on the shelves. Johnson & Johnson recalls 31 million bottles. The murders end as suddenly as they began. And then, nothing. No arrest. No conviction. 43 years later, the case is still officially unsolved. A man named James Lewis sent Johnson & Johnson a ransom letter demanding $1 million. He was convicted of extortion, but proven not to have been in Chicago at the time. A dock worker named Roger Arnold was investigated and never charged. Even Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was asked for a DNA sample. Nothing connected. What the Tylenol murders did do is change the country. The Federal Anti-Tampering Act of 1983 made product tampering a federal crime. Every tamper-evident foil seal on every over-the-counter medication you have ever opened exists because of 7 people who died in Illinois over 3 days in 1982. The story ends, for now, in Bolingbrook, a western suburb. A police sergeant named Drew Peterson. In 2004, his third wife, Kathleen Savio, is found dead in a dry bathtub. The death is initially ruled an accident, a drowning. In 2007, his fourth wife, Stacy Peterson, vanishes. She has not been seen since. After Stacy disappears, Savio's body is exhumed. The ruling is changed. The death is now classified as a homicide. Peterson is eventually convicted of Savio's murder in 2012. He receives 38 years. Then, in 2016, he is convicted again, this time of trying to hire a hitman from prison to kill the prosecutor who put him there. He receives an additional 40 years. Stacy's body has never been recovered. Peterson's case is, in its own quiet way, the modern echo of every chapter that came before it. Like Holmes, he was hiding in plain sight. Like Capone, his proximity to law enforcement insulated him for years. Like Gacy, he was a community fixture. The names change. The pattern does not. 8 cases, roughly 130 years, 1 state. The thing that keeps surfacing is not really about Illinois itself. It's about what large American cities, surrounded by quiet American suburbs, surrounded by a country that wants very badly to believe in its own decency, are capable of producing. Illinois just happens to have produced the documentation. The mugshots, the trials, the buried evidence, the unmarked graves. As recently as 2005, Operation Family Secrets prosecuted 14 Chicago outfit members, proving the organization's continued existence. There are cases here we did not cover. There are cases we cannot cover because they are still unfolding. There will be more. There always have been. But this is the map, from the World's Fair to the prison cell, from the brick wall on Clark Street to the bathtub in Bolingbrook, from the man in the clown suit to the bottle on the shelf. The complete, dark, unbroken history of Illinois crime. If you sat through all of this, the chapters, the dates, the names, go ahead and subscribe. There are 7 more cases queued up after this one, and every single one of them came out of the same state.